Welcome back to the class, guys. In the previous class you have learned about ports like Ethernet ports. You know there are two types of ports, physical ports and logical ports. So in this class we are going to learn about ports as well as protocols. You have been introduced to these two words, ports and protocols, in the earlier classes. So we are going to learn about ports and protocols furthermore in this class. So let us start with protocol. What is a protocol? In a networking domain, protocol or a network protocol is a set of rules that defines how a data should transmit between two end-to-end communicating devices. Network protocol plays a critical role in digital communications by allowing communicating devices to communicate to each other regardless of or irrespective of their internal processes, software and network designs. Today you are able to communicate using your Samsung phone to a MacBook, or you can send messages from a Linux machine to a Windows machine. It is all because of a network protocols. We can compare network protocols to the languages. I speak in Telugu, it is my mother tongue native language, and you may speak in Urdu or a French or a German. So if we both want to communicate to each other and understand each other, we need a translator who know both the languages and able to convey messages to and between both the parties, that is you and me. However, network protocol is not a translator, but it is a set of rules that actually dictates, or you can say it as a data structure that dictates how devices exchange data between end-to-end devices or across the networks. There are three types of network protocols: communication protocols, network management protocols and security protocols. Each category or each type has their own jobs. Like communication protocols defines the rules, syntaxes, semantics and synchronizes the communications between devices over network. Communications could be both digital or analog communications, and most importantly, these communication protocols formats the exchanging of data or various types of messages. Communication protocol is like mediator who prepares an agreement that allows establishing the communication between the devices. These protocols can be implemented by both software and hardware. As you have different categories like communication protocols, network management protocols and security protocols, again communication protocols can be further divided into various types, namely automation, instant messaging, routing, Bluetooth, file transfer and internet protocol. Internet protocol is actually a suite of different protocols, and once communication is established or a communication session is established, you need to manage the communication session, and this is the place where network management protocols takes place. So network management protocols defines various rules that helps in effectively operating the computer network. You know there are various kinds of devices or network when you are communicating with another device, like you have from your system and interim routers or middle routers, exit routers, and you have firewalls in between, and you have so many other devices. And once the communication is established where the communication protocols plays role, entire network should be managed for an effective operation of the network or the entire network. Network could be your local network or internet. So examples like SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, helps in managing the network communication by collecting the information regarding the communication devices over the IP networks, and of course modifying the information to change the device behavior, because devices could be of different manufacturers. So SNMP is an example of network management protocol. And once we have a nice managed network and two communicating devices or any number of communicating devices, the communication should be secure and safe so that both parties can trust each other while communicating over the network, IP networks. And here is the place where security protocols takes place. And by the way, when I say parties on networking domain, it means that they are the communicating devices. It could be router, switch, firewall or any network device. So when I refer as a party, it could be end-to-end devices or middle devices like routers, switches and firewalls. So security protocols defines the security of the communications so that both parties can trust each other. As you know, over the network there are so many unauthorized persons trying to infiltrate into the network system for personal benefits or any other benefits. So in order to stop these unauthorized users from sniffing into the network or sniffing over the network or infiltrate into the network, security protocols are described or designed with certain set of rules in order to protect the network communications. And of course, security protocols can also be called as a cryptographic protocols because this ensures the security over the network or the data sent over the network from unauthorized users. The basic functions of security protocols is encryption, authentication and transportation. And when it comes to the examples of network protocols, the examples could be like TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, Internet Protocol, UDP, User Datagram Protocol, Post Office Protocol, SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, FTP, File Transfer Protocol, HTTP, so on. And we will learn about these protocols in the same class. And Internet Protocol Suite. Internet Protocol Suite or TCP/IP, that is Transmission Control Protocol or Internet Protocol, is an example of communication protocol which defines how a data communication should be packetized, addressed, transmitted, routed and received over the network between the communicating devices. As you know, data always travels in the form of packets. You cannot download 1 GB file at once. It is always packetized as 5 MB or 2 MB packets, and how these packets should be addressed and where should be transmitted and what are the available routes over the network. And after all this, the data is finally received by the recipient device. And below are the examples of Internet Protocol suites at different layers. In the application layer, you are going to learn about the layers in the final class of this module. So in the application layer, you have BGP, DHCP. BGP is Border Gateway Protocol, DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, DNS, Domain Name System, FTP, File Transfer Protocol, HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTPS. HTTPS is Secure HTTP. Then we have IMAP, LDAP, NTP, OSPF, POP, SMTP, SNMP, SSH, Telnet and so on. And at transport layer we have TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, UDP, User Datagram Protocol, DCCP, SCTP, RSVP. At internet layer we have IP version 4 and 6, ICMP, IPsec, and at link layer we have ARP, that is Address Resolution Protocol, NDP, PPP, and finally we have MAC. These are all the protocols that are part of Internet Protocol suite. We are going to learn about few of these protocols in the final part of this video. And next we have ports. You know what is a port. As you can see in the image over here, there are a lot of ports. Optical audio port, USB port, fireware, Ethernet. We learned about Ethernet. Then Apple desktop port, Mac serial port, parallel port, serial ports, auxiliary ports, audio video, input output ports, components, connectors, MIDI, VGA, HDMI and so on. These are all different kinds of ports, and these are physical ports. Ports are two types, physical port and a logical port. So this is a physical port, and physical port in electronics and communications domain or arena is an interface that is used to send and receive data. Basically, it is a physical component that you use to connect any peripheral devices like your mouse, keyboards, and any other device like your USB in which you have songs or movies or any other documents that you want to access. So basically, these are physical interfaces. You can connect to the ports to transmit data, meaning input devices can be connected to output devices. Like keyboard is connected to CPU and you give inputs via CPU, and output is displayed on the monitor. So these are all the physical ports, and below this URL is a link from where I have downloaded this image, and credit goes to the owner of this image. And if you go to this link, you can learn about these ports in depth. Next we have logical ports. So what is a logical port? Unlike your physical port, which is physical component that you can touch, logical ports are virtual ports. You cannot touch. It is a communication channel or a virtual channel on which your system identifies types of service, or it is called as process, and this identified type of data is related to some application or a service and is permitted through a virtual channel, often identified by channel number, which is called as a port number, and only certain types of protocols are allowed into these logical ports. For example, when you are downloading a data, a file transfer protocol comes into the scene and it has a particular or a unique port number, which is port number 21, And IANA is responsible for reserving ports for well-known services. Like for example, FTP has reserved port which is number 21, HTTP has reserved port which is number 80, and we have some more services like DNS, SNMP, HTTP, HTTPS, all have their own reserved ports. If you have installed an application like XAMPP or Apache, which is a web server application, and if you are running a web server and hosting a website on it, and if I have to access that website, a server computer must have an open port 80 so that I can access web data on this via this port number, and another port number is opened on my machine to receive the data. And for example, let me show you an application called Nmap, and I will scan my machine to check what are all the open ports that are open on my system. As you can see, this is a Nmap Zenmap application, which is a GUI version of Nmap, and it is called as network mapper. We are going to look about this tool, Nmap tool, in the information gathering phase or scanning phase, particularly where we scan for open ports on any system or a target system. So let me open this app, and if I want to scan my machine, so let me type local IP 127.0.0.1, and if I do the intent scan, and don't worry about this command, we are going to learn about these commands in depth in the upcoming classes. So let me start the scan process. So scanning is going on. So it is going to scan my machine and looks for the all open ports, and it will show me what are all the services that are there on this machine. So as you can see, discovered open port 135, 445, 5357 TCP on this machine. And now initiating service scan means what are all the services that are running. It also actually initiates the scanning of the operating system. Now you can see it is, so as you can see, Windows 10 is running. Actually it is version 11, but it's still showing as 10. And we have 135 port open, 445 port open, and 5357 ports are open on this machine. So this is port number 135 and 445 and 5353. So this is how you can find out the open ports on your system or on the target system. So these are actually virtual ports, but not a physical ports. These are not interfaces. These are actually virtual ports. So now coming back to the slide, on the virtual ports, process or specific data is identified by a port number. That's what we learned. And port number is a 16-bit unsigned number. And port numbers in networking domain, IP networking domain, ranges from 0 to 65535, 65,535 ports. As you know, in computer networking, everything is in zeros and ones, that is bits. And if you calculate 2 to the power of 16, you will get 65536. But since port number starts from 0, we have to reduce -1 number from 65536. So port number ranges from 0 to 65535. And port number 0 is reserved port. It is not assigned to any type of service. And yet again, to give us a lot to study in our life, numbers are divided into 3 types. If they make subject complicated, you have to learn. You have to remember a lot of things. Okay. So port numbers are again classified, you can say categorized, or you can say they divided it into 3 types: well-known ports, reserved or registered ports, and dynamic ports. So well-known ports, as you have already seen, certain services like HTTP, DNS, DHCP, they have all their ports reserved, and no other type of communication goes through that port number other than for which it has been assigned or reserved. And well-known ports ranges from 0 to 1023. Examples of reserved ports are HTTP, TCP, FTP, and as you can see the definition, they are reserved for a specific purpose only. A specific type of a data is transmitted through that port. And registered ports or reserved ports ranges from 1024 to 49151, 49,151, and they are not assigned or controlled, but they can be registered to prevent the duplication. Also, since technology is increasing day by day and well-known ports are only 1023 since 0 is reserved, these registered ports can be used for future use also. That is the reason they are not assigned to any other particular service. And finally, we have dynamic ports. Dynamic ports are temporary ports, and software applications or programs can use these ports randomly to communicate with other applications on the network. So let me take an example to explain this. If I create a malware or a Trojan and inject your computer or a target computer, and I want a reverse shell or a back connection or a reverse connection, then I will configure my payload in which attack vector in which I will assign a number from dynamic range of ports so that I can get a reversal from the victim machine which I have hacked. And you are going to see this in the exploitation phase of this course, where we hack target machines and get a reversal, and we can remotely control that machine. So port scanning is very important, and you have to understand some well-known ports and their protocols, means services. And if you apply for a job, interviewer may ask you what is the port number of so and so protocol or a service. So you have to know certain port numbers and protocols memorized. So in the next slide we will see ports and protocols together. So let's start with port number 21 under well-known ports. So port number 21 is used for FTP, that is file transfer protocol. FTP is a communication protocol. As you know, there are three types of protocols: communication, management and security protocols. FTP falls under communication protocol, and it is a standard protocol that is used to transfer files from server system to a client machine. If you find port number 21 is open, then there must be an FTP server running, and client must use their credentials to authenticate into FTP server to download the files. And as a hacker perspective, you can exploit FTP vulnerabilities. For example, there is CVE-ID 1999-0351, which is a DOS type of vulnerability, means you can actually exploit FTP server and conduct denial of service and unauthorized access to data. Or if you get credentials somehow, either by brute force attack, or if you steal credentials of certain user, you can actually download the files completely from the FTP server if they are very important files. Like for example, government or military may have some classified files stored on their servers, and if FTP service is running, that is port number 21 is running, then you can of course download the files. And FTP can be used for backups, replication and of course accessing the data. Next we have port number 22, which is SSH, which is secure shell for secure logins. As port number 21 FTP falls under communication protocol, SSH also falls under communication protocol and is also called as cryptographic network protocol. When there is a need of a secure communication in unsecured IP networks, you can use SSH for secure communications. So SSH is a protocol or a software package that enables secure communications or secure system administration and file transfers on insecure networks. Basically, SSH is highly used in data centers and large enterprise networks, and the communication is a client server model. So SSH protocols uses encryption to secure the communication between that client and the server, and any user who want to communicate with the SSH server has to authenticate first. And in order to get that session established, client has to communicate with the server by contacting the server for public key. A public key is released to the client machine. Then both the system negotiate with the parameters on secure channel. Then user have to give a login credentials in order to communicate with the SSH server. PuTTY is an example for a client software in order to communicate with the SSH server. We are going to use PuTTY in these course videos. And as said, SSH uses encryption to secure the communication lines. Next we have Telnet, which runs on port number 23, and Telnet is again a client server protocol, also an application protocol that is used for bidirectional interactive text communications between two parties, two machines, and uses interface called a virtual terminal in order to initiate or to have the conversation, a text based conversation. And if you see port number 23 is open, it means that Telnet server or Telnet service, Telnet D is running on the machine, and you can use virtual terminal in order to initiate the conversation with the server in which service is running. And there are serious vulnerabilities, a security concern with Telnet protocol, and Telnet does not encrypt any conversation or data that is sent on the networks. And if there is a sniffer on a network, means if any hacker is trying to sniff the conversation, then the hacker can steal everything and read it in a clear text format because the data is not encrypted, and this is one of the very serious concern with the telnet protocol. So let me show you the demo of telnet command. Let me open the command prompt, type Windows R cmd and hit enter. So this is your command prompt, and you need an IP address to test if there is any port open. For example, if port 80 is open and you have to test whether the port 80 is open using telnet command, you have to type telnet. You need an IP address and you need a port number over here, port number. Okay, so first let me ping Vidyalaya. This is my website, layah.in, to find out the IP address of this website. So the IP address of this vidyalaya.in is 192.201.179.80. So let me do telnet 195.201.179 and 80 and give the port number as 80. There will be an error. Telnet is not recognized as internal or external command. So by default on Windows 10 11 machines, telnet client is not enabled by default. So in order to enable it, go to your control panel. Go to control panel, under programs, and here under programs and features you see turn Windows features on and off, and scroll down here to see the telnet, and this is the telnet client. You have to enable by clicking on this box, and now click OK button. Windows features is now applying changes. Okay, it looked for required files. Now changes are applying. Now telnet client is installed. So let me go back again once and let me repeat the command. As you can see on the terminal window, telnet IP address and the port numbers. So the screen is blank. It means that nothing is blocking your connection. The port 80 is open and the connection is successful on port 80. Sometimes firewall may be blocking the connections on certain ports. In that situation, you may be seeing connection IP address, and after a certain time the connection will be lost by timeout. And next, port number 25, simple mail transfer protocol. Again, SMTP protocol is a communication protocol, and the protocol is a software application which is used to send and receive electronic mails, that is emails, on IP networks. Basically it uses mail servers to route the mails or exchange mails between mailing clients. So there is a server which routes the messages, and clients uses SMTP client softwares in order to send and receive the emails. Client software such as Outlook depends on protocols such as IMAP or POP3 to retrieve the emails or to read the emails. So basically SMTP is used to send the emails or route the emails, while protocols such as POP, Post Office Protocol, is used to retrieve mails from the mailing servers. Next, port number 53, DNS. DNS stands for Domain Name System, and it is a protocol that is used to identify devices over IP networks. Devices could be your computers, servers, or any other device that is connected by IP addresses. So it does by resolving domain name to an IP address. DNS have a records called resource records. They are just like your telephone directory, and in the record DNS associates domain names with other form of information like your IP addresses and so on. So when you type URL in a browser, that is Uniform Resource Locator in a browser, example www.facebook.com, you will not be directly connected to Facebook initially. The facebook.com name is actually resolved to the IP address by these DNS servers into IP addresses, that is IP address of facebook.com in this case, and then you can access the facebook.com website. If port number 53 is open, it means that DNS service is running on that system. and we are going to learn about DNS much more in ethical hacking based classes. So next we have port number 80, HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This is well known service because I hope all of must you have opened websites with HTTP prefix in your URL. This protocol is actually the foundation of www, that is World Wide Web, where hypertext media or hypermedia is sent and received via World Wide Web, and HTTP protocol plays an important or crucial role in World Wide Web, where it functions as a request response protocol and works in client server model. Your FTP also is a client server model. So HTTP functions as a request response protocol in a client server model, where you use a client application like your browser in order to request media or content from the web servers and server responses with HTML files and other media files and displays on the browsers, that is client applications or user agents. So when port 80 is open, it means that web server applications like Apache Web Server, IIS, Internet Information Services, which was developed by Microsoft, NGINX. It is very popular web server application. Other than web server, it also acts as a load balancer. We have learned about load balancing, and also it acts as a reverse proxy also. So this is very popular web server. So if you find these services running on any system, it means that port 80 is opened. And if you find port 80 is open, you have to find what application or what server it is running, what is the version of that server application, and of course we need to find the vulnerabilities in order to exploit the web server. This is hacker's perspective or hacker's point of view. And since client machines request for resource on web server and the web server has to respond to the request, there are response codes called as HTTP response code that you should learn by heart and memorize. Keep it in mind. Do not forget, even if I wake up you in the middle of the night and ask you. Of course, I'm not going to do that. So you have to learn and memorize these response codes, and I will give you a material PDF file in which I will mention all the HTTP response codes. And as a penetration tester, you have to find the vulnerabilities in web applications, and at that point of time when you are conducting penetration testing on web servers or web applications, you will encounter these response codes, and you have to understand the status of the server or application that is running on this web server using these response codes. And for example, if you see HTML response code as 1XX, that is 100 or 101, it is informational response, meaning a request was received and understood, and it says clients to wait for the final response. If you see 200 series of HTTP response, it means or it indicates that action requested by the clients was received, understood and accepted. For example, HTTP response code 200 means response is successful, but the actual response will depend upon the request method used by the user agent, that is your browser. So basically you have two types of request methods. One is get method and the other is post method, and it is requested by your browser, and based on these request methods server will respond. Another example, like if you see HTTP response code 201, it means created response, which means request is fulfilled resulting in the creation of new resource. 202 accepted, 203 non-authoritative information, 204 no content. In 204 the server actually processes the request and there is no returning of any content. And similarly, like in 300 series of HTTP response code, if you see 300 as a response code, multiple choices, 301 moved permanently, 302 found, 303 see other, 304 not modified, 305 use proxy, 306 switch proxy, 307 temporary redirect. And similarly for 400 series, if you see 400, it is a bad request, 401 unauthorized, meaning the request required authentication and authentication is failed, so it is considered as unauthorized. So the response code is 401, which is unauthorized. 402, payment required. 403, it is a forbidden request. And forbidden request means the request is valid but server is refusing to respond, as user may not have permission to access that resource on web server. So the response is 403, forbidden, and 404, file not found. This is very common HTTP response code that you will often see on websites. File not found. So when you try to search some files and when you don't find that file on server, you will receive 404 response from the web server. Next we have 443, HTTPS, Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. So HTTPS is nothing but HTTP with security as an extension to HTTP protocol and used for secure communication between clients and web servers. Basically, it adds encryption layer of SSL and TLS to protect the HTTP traffic from being sniffed by the hackers. And if you don't have encryption in the traffic, HTTP traffic, a plain text traffic can be sniffed by the hacker and your valuable information like your personal information, credit card information or any other sensitive information can be grabbed or can be sniffed by the unauthorized user over IP networks. So by adding the encryption layer of SSL and TLS, HTTP traffic can be easily secured, and it has been assigned different port number other than 80 because 80 is already assigned to HTTP. So your user agents, that is browsers, know how to trust these HTTPS based websites based on the certificate authorities that it comes pre-installed with the softwares. And next we have port number 110, POP, Post Office Protocol, which is an application layer protocol that is used to retrieve electronic mails from the mail servers onto the client machine on user agents like Outlook or any other email client application. SMTP protocol, which runs on port 25, is used to route the emails or send the emails. Someone has to be there to receive the emails, and there should be a procedure, set of rules, and that is POP protocol that is used to receive the emails onto the client's machine. So that's it in the class, guys. Have a great day, because you are going to do some research on port number 123, 143 and 631. Thank you for watching the video and do subscribe to the YouTube channel INSECTECHS.